Hello, my name is Betsy and I'm pregnant. Okay, so in this video, I'm gonna recap my first trimester of pregnancy. So today actually is day one of my 14th week. So I'm officially in my second trimester. So perfect time to take a look back at the first trimester. In this first trimester recap, I'm gonna talk about everything that happened in the first trimester, from finding out to symptoms, cravings, all of my emotions, my first doctor's appointment. I had some spotting and actually had to go to the ER. I'm gonna talk about everything. Okay, but first, a little bit about this pregnancy. I am a first-time mom to be. Oh my gosh, I'm a mom to be. It's my first time being pregnant, so everything has been very anxious and kind of scary. Pregnancy is scary. I'm sure if you've done it before, it's less scary, but this first trimester was scary. Okay, so finding out. I sort of just had this gut feeling. That might sound cliche, but I just had this feeling, and I took a test, what would have been 4 days before my missed period, and it was negative. So I thought, okay, I'm not pregnant. Went on about my life. 4 days later, my period didn't come. So that day I took another test and it was very positive, very positive. So I don't know if when I tested 4 days earlier, it was too early. I don't know. Got a negative though. 4 days later, got a positive. So that would have been, I would have been 4 weeks pregnant then, technically. In the 5th week, this week started to get kind of weird for me. In the beginning of the week, it wasn't bad weird, it was just weird. I was hyper focused on being pregnant and pregnancy and all things baby. I would go on Pinterest and just browse for what felt like hours. I would go on to Target.com and look at all the baby stuff, and it was from excitement. So it was fun doing all of it, but I'm so glad now at this point in my pregnancy, I'm not that consumed with it. There are some days now where I actually forget I'm pregnant, which is nice. So symptoms at 5 weeks. I was definitely very tired. I would wake up at 8 in the morning, take a nap around noon or 1, and then literally be ready for bed by 8:30. And then I could go to bed at 8:30 and sleep clear through the night. I was exhausted. So then towards the end of the 5th week, I actually started getting some very faint spotting and I was cramping. So I, of course, am a nervous wreck at this point, thinking all the worst, Googling and just scaring myself. So now on to the 6th week. But 6 weeks, one day, the spotting intensified and I was bleeding at this point. And I was also cramping really bad. So this happened at nighttime. I made myself just go to sleep, and I told myself if I was still bleeding and cramping in the morning, I would go to the ER. I woke up in the morning. I wasn't bleeding anymore, but I did still have some light cramping, and I just decided go to the ER, better safe than sorry. Trigger warning, I was convinced I was having a miscarriage. So I go to the ER, and I will never forget the doctor who was doing my intake evaluation. She was so calm and patient and sweet, she was so nice. And she was just so positive and reassuring. And she said to me in the most confident tone ever, she was just bleeding and cramping does not automatically mean miscarriage. Let's just run some tests and go from there. And I instantly burst into tears. So then I go back and I do a urine test, that came back positive. They took blood, that came back positive. Also, that's when they found that I am, my blood type is O negative. And they explained to me that, okay, I'm not a medical professional, so do your own research on this if you want. But pretty much there's something called RH incompatibility. And that's where the mother or the pregnant person has a negative blood type and the fetus has a positive blood type, and then they're incompatible and the body will reject the fetus. There's obviously that early, there's no way to figure out what the baby's blood type was, but to be safe, they gave me an injection. It was called Rogam, and I will actually get that again at 28 weeks. So they gave me that, and they explained that that could have been the cause of the bleeding and cramping. So then I went for an ultrasound. I had to wait for what felt like an eternity for that to come back. And when it did, everything looked good. They found a heartbeat. I think technically at 6 weeks, it's not technically a heartbeat, it's just cardiac activity. I don't know. Again, I'm not a medical professional, but that was good that they found that activity. They called it a heart rate, and the baby was measuring on track for 6 weeks. So I left the ER, everything was good. that same doctor came in and like talked to me before I left, and I'm in tears again because she was just the sweetest doctor. Like I'm so grateful for her. So yeah, I did actually have some spotting for like the next 2 or 3 days, and then it went away, and luckily I have not spotted since. So at like the 6-week mark when all this was happening, I think I was so focused on that and my fears and anxieties surrounding that I wasn't even aware of any of the other symptoms. So I don't really remember if I had any other symptoms aside from like exhaustion. I feel like I was sleeping all the time then. At like 7 weeks, I definitely started noticing more morning sickness. And by 8 weeks, it was like full-blown nausea, morning, noon, and night. So something that I was not prepared for, and I had no idea that like this was how it worked. You don't see an OB until 8 to 10 weeks. So how my OB office handles those first few appointments, they call them verification of pregnancy. So the very first one, you come in, they verify the pregnancy with a urine test, and mine was positive. And then they give you just a full-blown wellness exam as well as a pap smear. Joy. So then my second appointment in this series of 3 was scheduled for 3 weeks out. So I would have been 11 weeks at that point. And that's when I was scheduled to get my first ultrasound, again, to verify that it was a viable pregnancy, everything was where it was supposed to be in the uterus, all that good stuff. But because I had had the bleeding and cramping at 6 weeks, my doctor and I decided that if we could get me in earlier for the ultrasound, we should do that just for peace of mind. So I actually ended up going at 9 weeks, 5 days for my first ultrasound. Everything was good. I was so relieved. I was a nervous wreck leading up to that appointment. I hate that I do this to myself, but I always assume the worst, and I worry and I overthink. So I was almost preparing myself for the worst, but still trying to stay so optimistic. That is one thing that I'll talk about later in this video, but at some point you just have to make the decision to be optimistic in pregnancy because there's so many unknowns and things out of your control. But yeah, that appointment, I will say that appointment. So I couldn't get into my OB's office for the ultrasound. So I actually ended up going to like the lab, like the imaging lab at the hospital. So it was definitely not the first ultrasound experience I was hoping for and like I'd seen on YouTube and stuff. It wasn't like interactive. The tech couldn't really tell me anything. She did show me like the heartbeat, a little flicker on the screen. I couldn't listen to it, but she couldn't tell me if anything looked good or if things looked normal. It had to be looked at by a radiologist, and then my doctor relayed all that information to me. A few weeks later, no, it's like a week later, I got like in my portal for my doctor's office, a message saying everything looked good and the heart rate was good. The heart rate was 179, which is within normal range. Yeah, and it was so cool on that first ultrasound, the baby was even like squirming around, like shimmying around a little bit. It was really cool to see. I'll put a picture on the screen of that first ultrasound that I got. So then the last appointment in that first series of 3 to verify the pregnancy was actually with another OB at the office. There's like 6 OBs at this office, and you have to see all 6 at some point in your pregnancy because any of them could help deliver the baby when it's time. So I saw that OB at that third appointment, and that one was just, it was really short. It was like a 15-minute appointment. Every time you go in, you have to pee in a cup. Other than that, we just talked. We just literally talked about things you can't eat, things you can and can't do, should and shouldn't do, all that stuff. He answered questions that I had, and that was it. It was kind of just a very quick appointment, nothing exciting or anything. So after those 3 appointments to verify the pregnancy, at this point, I'm like 10 and a half weeks. And the next 3 weeks were pretty smooth and uneventful with the exception of the nausea and the tiredness. And like that first trimester tiredness is next level. It's like nothing I've ever felt. Like I'm a wedding planner and a wedding florist, so I am used to, you know, during wedding season working 15-hour days where I'm like going nonstop. So I know what just being like overly tired feels like, but this exhaustion in the first trimester was next level. The exhaustion coupled with the nausea that I had made me miserable. Like I hated everything about it, to the point where like I was questioning if I was making the right choice. Like, why am I putting myself through this when I feel so awful? And then that turned into guilt. Here I am pregnant. I could list 5 people in my life who I know are trying to conceive right now and having trouble. My own sister is trying to conceive and she's having trouble. And here I am pregnant, unplanned, and I'm so miserable. I should be so happy, so grateful, all these things, but I'm miserable. And so that turned into guilt. And I know that it's okay to feel those things. Like, my feelings are valid, all that, I get it. But yeah, that's something I struggled with a lot in my first trimester, was feeling guilty for how much I hated being pregnant. I have, though, in the last several weeks, so the last like 3 weeks of the first trimester, I started really focusing on like things to come. So in the second trimester, I'm gonna find out the gender. I actually have that appointment scheduled. It is scheduled at 20 weeks. It's my anatomy scan, and I'm so excited for that. It's also the same week as my birthday, and it's the halfway mark. So looking forward to those things has helped, you know, when I'm feeling nauseous and miserable and then guilty because I'm so miserable. I try to focus on happier things and exciting things to come. I haven't really been buying much for the baby, which I'm surprised at myself. I figured I would just be going crazy every time I went to Target, but I think not knowing whether it's a boy or girl yet has really reined that in for me. I've bought a few like neutral things here and there, but just literally a few, like it fits in one bag. I did start my registry on Amazon. That was so much fun to sit down and go through and do that. Here and there, I see other things that I want to add, so it's not finished yet, but I started. My sister and I have also been planning my shower. Like I said before, I'm a wedding planner and a wedding florist. My sister and I own our business together, and planning this kind of stuff is like right in our wheelhouse. So we are having so much fun planning it. I've also started to plan my maternity shoot. I was on the fence with it because I am a plus size pregnant woman. So that's a whole nother, that's a whole nother video, but I'll talk about it a little bit here. I'm sure most plus size women can relate, but how I have felt is kind of this fear that my experience with pregnancy won't be the same because I'm plus size. You know, I know I'm not gonna have that like perfectly round, cute little baby bump. And that's okay, but I also feel like, well, should I even have a maternity shoot then? But I ultimately came to the decision that I'm gonna do it. I actually found some really awesome people to follow on TikTok. I will put them here. They definitely are inspiring if you're a plus size pregnant person. So because of all of those feelings I had surrounding like bump and being plus size and that, all that stuff, in the first trimester, I didn't take any like bump pictures or anything, but my goal for the second trimester is to take more pictures of my bump. While it might not look like the bumps you see all over social media, it is still a bump and it's my bump. So that is the energy I'm trying to go through the rest of this pregnancy with. Speaking of being plus size and pregnant, there were some fears health-wise going into it. You know, things like gestational diabetes, high blood pressure, that kind of stuff. So during those first few appointments where they were verifying the pregnancy, I had to get blood work done. I'm not a medical professional. I think it's my blood sugar or my blood glucose levels. They came back normal, so no gestational diabetes right now. Obviously, they're gonna continue to test me throughout my pregnancy, and my blood pressure has been good so far. So as far as cravings, I didn't really have any like weird cravings. Like you hear about some pregnant people having like weird cravings. I didn't have that. I would say when I feel nauseous, the thing that sounds the most appetizing and like sounds like it will give you some relief is something cold, and like for me, that was ice cream. So I guess that was a craving. An alternative to just full-blown ice cream, I started going to this place by my house and I would get smoothies. So it felt like I'm satisfying that craving of ice cream, but it's nutrient dense. So yeah, other than that, I really didn't have like cravings. I will say food definitely tastes so much better when you're pregnant. For me, at least. I know that there are some people who have like crazy aversions to food. I didn't have that, luckily. So yeah, that was my first trimester, and it's crazy. It felt like it took forever, but also looking back, like it flew by. And then thinking to the fact that like, so I'm at 14 weeks right now. My halfway mark is 20 weeks. And then I only have like what, 3 more, no, I'm so bad at math, 4 more months? Wow, like it's gonna fly by. But at the same time, it's like such an exciting thing you're looking forward to. Like you want it to come so fast. It's such a weird feeling. Another thing that more recently I've started getting really excited for is my dog meeting the baby. Like I cannot wait for my dog to meet the baby. He is like the sweetest dog. I think what's brought this on is he has become super attached to me and like almost protective. I like obviously did some Googling and there's not really anything clear on like if they can smell a difference in you, but it did say that they can like, they pick up on the changes in your routine, your mood, those kinds of things. He can definitely tell something's happening. I don't know if he knows what, obviously, but I wish I could talk to him. So I am very excited for him to meet the baby. I'm not scared or worried about it at all. Actually, there's one thing that I'm worried about, and that is he loves sitting on people. Like he loves to cuddle and he loves to be right next to people. So I'm a little afraid, and I'm obviously gonna take precautions. I'm just picturing like coming in and maybe setting the car seat down and he comes over and just plops down on the baby. No, never putting the car seat on the ground. So yeah, I think I pretty much talked about everything in my first trimester. So second trimester, I actually went to my 14-week ultrasound yesterday, and I was gonna get some video and some content to post here and over on TikTok, but I couldn't film in the doctor's office, so I was kind of bummed about that. But I will show the ultrasound photos that I got to take home. It is so insane, the difference from 9 weeks to 14 weeks. It's crazy, it's insane. So I plan to document this pregnancy here as well as TikTok. I will do a second trimester recap, obviously at the end of the second trimester. But I will also try to document like my 20-week anatomy scan, gender reveal, all that stuff. The maternity shoot I'm planning, everything. If you are expecting a baby, follow along and let's be pregnant friends.
Me too. What kind of old is? She said Beach Boy. I said you not